It was a windy afternoon in downtown Chicago, the kind that made the buildings groan and flags whip violently against their poles. Far above the street, 30 stories high, a lone window cleaner named Eddie clung desperately to a swinging scaffold. One of the supporting cables had snapped, leaving the platform lopsided and dangerously unstable. His safety harness was tangled, and the bucket of soapy water had already plummeted to the pavement below, narrowly missing a pedestrian. Eddie's heart pounded in his chest as the wind howled around him. His hands, raw and trembling, gripped the side rail of the scaffold as it rocked violently with each gust. He screamed for help, but his voice was drowned out by the rush of traffic and the sheer height. Below him, the people looked like ants, unaware that a man was hanging between life and death. Inside the building, Marcus, a quiet and observant maintenance worker, was walking down the hallway with a wrench in his hand. He paused to glance out the window and saw the silhouette of a man pressed against the glass from the outside. Their eyes met. Eddie's face was pale and soaked with sweat, his mouth forming the desperate word, "Help." Without thinking, Marcus dropped his tools and ran. He pushed through a conference room filled with startled executives, knocking over a chair as he sprinted to the nearest window with an emergency latch. Security tried to stop him, but he yelled, "There's a man hanging out there." And they froze, unsure of what to do. Marcus spotted a fire hose mounted to the wall. He yanked it out, wrapped it around his waist, and tied a knot so tight it bit into his ribs. Then, cracking open the window against the pressure of the wind, he leaned out dangerously, arm extended. "Grab my hand," he shouted over the wind. Eddie tried to reach, but the scaffold dipped further. His foot slipped. He screamed again, certain this was the end. But Marcus didn't let go. He stretched further, dangerously so, and grabbed hold of Eddie's arm just as the platform swung hard to the left. Muscles straining, veins bulging, Marcus began to pull. Eddie's weight nearly dragged them both down, but Marcus planted his feet, using the hose as leverage, and refused to quit. Just when his grip started to fail, 2 more employees arrived and grabbed Marcus from behind, pulling both men to safety. Eddie collapsed onto the carpet, gasping and sobbing, his face pressed into the floor. The entire office burst into cheers. But Marcus stood up quietly, brushed off his uniform, and said, "I just did what anyone would do." He walked out before anyone could ask for a quote. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, but the real rescue had already happened. The news vans were gone by the next morning. The headlines had moved on to politics and celebrity scandals, and the story of the brave maintenance worker who saved a man from falling 30 stories faded into the background. Marcus didn't mind. He'd never cared for attention. The few coworkers who brought it up quickly stopped when they realized he wasn't interested in retelling the story. He showed up for work the next day at 6 a.m., like always. Same uniform, same mop bucket, same quiet nod to the security guard at the front desk. But inside, a small part of him hoped something might change. Maybe a thank you from management. Maybe a raise. Maybe someone would remember. But no one did. The building's operations returned to normal. The executives resumed their tight schedules and coffee runs, barely acknowledging Marcus as he passed them in the hallway. The HR manager called him in briefly to fill out a liability report and told him, "You probably saved us a lawsuit," before sending him back to fix a broken pipe on the 12th floor. Weeks turned into months. Eddie never came back. Marcus didn't even know his full name, just remembered his face, pale with fear, fingers clinging to that scaffold like it was the last thread tying him to life. Every time Marcus looked out a high-rise window, the memory came flooding back. Meanwhile, life didn't get any easier for Marcus. His mother fell ill, and he had to take on extra shifts to help pay for her medications. His rent went up, his old truck started making strange noises, and some nights, he'd lie awake wondering if the world had already forgotten what he did. But still, he never complained. He continued helping others in small, quiet ways. Fixing the elevators when they jammed. Staying late to mop up a spill no one else wanted to deal with. Listening to the lonely old man on the 15th floor talk about his late wife. He wasn't a hero in the eyes of the world, but in his heart, he knew he had done the right thing. And that had to be enough. The envelope was thick, cream-colored, and unusually formal. Marcus found it wedged between a gas bill and a coupon flyer in his mailbox. At first, he thought it was junk mail, maybe another scam offer. But when he opened it, the gold-embossed lettering caught his eye. "You are cordially invited to a private ceremony honoring everyday heroes who have changed lives through acts of courage and selflessness. It was signed by the CEO of a major real estate company, someone Marcus had never heard of, and listed a time and date for an event on the rooftop of a luxurious new high-rise downtown. There was even a car service voucher attached. Marcus stared at the invitation, confused. It had no return address, no further explanation. Just a name at the bottom he didn't recognize, Edward K. Fields. He almost tossed it in the trash. It felt like a mistake. He hadn't done anything heroic in years. His days were spent fixing broken light fixtures, patching drywall, and hauling trash. But something about the weight of that envelope, and the handwritten note that read, "I've waited a long time to thank you properly," made him pause. The night of the ceremony, Marcus wore his best clothes. They were a little worn at the collar and a little tight around the waist, but freshly ironed. The car that picked him up had tinted windows and a driver in a black suit who smiled and opened the door for him. As the elevator ascended to the rooftop, Marcus's palms began to sweat. The last time he'd been this high up, he'd nearly been dragged out a window trying to save a stranger. He stepped out into a garden glowing with string lights, soft music playing under the stars. Dozens of well-dressed guests mingled around crystal tables, sipping wine and clapping politely as the MC began to speak. "Tonight," the host said into the microphone, "we celebrate quiet strength, the kind of bravery that doesn't make headlines, but changes lives." Marcus stood near the back, eyes scanning the crowd, still unsure why he was there. Then the host continued, "10 years ago, I was clinging to a broken scaffold outside a skyscraper, sure I was about to die. And then someone pulled me to safety. He didn't know my name. I didn't know his, but he saved my life. And I never forgot." Gasps rippled through the audience as a man walked out from behind the curtain. Dressed in a tailored gray suit, a confident smile on his face, he stepped to the mic. "I'm Eddie, and the man who saved me that day, is standing right here with us." Eddie turned and pointed directly at Marcus, who stood frozen, disbelief etched into his face. Applause erupted as the crowd turned toward him. A spotlight followed. The MC motioned him forward, but Marcus didn't move, until Eddie stepped down from the stage, walked over, and wrapped him in a long, firm hug. "I've been searching for you for years," Eddie whispered. "You gave me my life back. And tonight, I want to give you something in return." The rooftop was completely silent for a moment as Eddie stepped back from the hug, his eyes glistening under the soft evening lights. Marcus, still stunned, stood in place like he was dreaming. He had never imagined this, never expected that the man he once saved would not only remember him but find him after a whole decade. Eddie motioned to one of his assistants, who stepped forward and handed Marcus a sleek black folder. Confused, Marcus opened it slowly. Inside was a set of official documents. The first was a property deed, his name printed clearly at the top. The address belonged to a modest but beautiful house in a peaceful neighborhood, far better than the apartment he'd lived in for years. The second document was a check, dated that very day. The amount, $250,000, made Marcus's knees weaken. He blinked, looked up at Eddie, then back at the check, sure it had to be a mistake. But Eddie wasn't done. "After that day, I left the city, started over," Eddie said into the mic, now addressing everyone. "I built a small window cleaning business. I never forgot what happened, never forgot Marcus's face or his voice yelling through the wind to grab his hand. I worked hard, and that little business, it grew into one of the biggest commercial cleaning companies in the state. And tonight, I'm opening a new corporate headquarters, right here in this city." He turned back to Marcus. "And I want you to run it with me." The crowd applauded again, louder this time, but Marcus didn't hear them. His chest tightened as he tried to process it all: a house, money, a real career, recognition. For 10 long years, he had never asked for thanks. He had never even dreamed of reward. He did what was right, and that had always been enough. But standing there now, under the stars, with tears in his eyes and hundreds of strangers clapping for him, Marcus finally allowed himself to feel something he hadn't in a long time seen. Eddie reached into his pocket and pulled out something small, a weathered keychain. The same one Marcus had dropped on the floor the day he saved Eddie, engraved with the words, "Do good anyway." "I've kept this every day for 10 years, Eddie said softly, placing it in Marcus's hand. "You inspired me to live better. To give back. To become someone worthy of that second chance." Marcus closed his hand around the keychain, his fingers trembling. For a man who had spent a lifetime in the shadows, fixing things no one noticed, helping people who never looked twice, this moment was everything. And in that moment, As laughter returned to the rooftop and music began to play, Marcus smiled. Not because of the money, or the title, or even the home. But because, for the first time in years, he finally knew.